right, good afternoon, everybody. Uh, my name is Amanda Daniel, and I'm the Manager of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Jefferson Center for Mental Health. Jefferson Center for Mental Health is a community mental health center that has been serving Jefferson County for over 60 years. And we are here today to present a program about supporting you and your family during the new normal of COVID-19. And joining me today are Mayra Granados, who is one of our bilingual Centro Dones clinicians, and Chelsea Wiebert, who is part of our caring, what is the Spirit of Colorado? Colorado Spirit. I knew I should have gotten your logo, the Colorado Spirit, and they are providing crisis services in this time of need also through Jefferson Center for Mental Health. So just some Zoom reminders, if you are joining us by Zoom, to keep your audio on mute. You can choose to share your video or not share your video. Add any questions to the chat. And since I'm sharing my screen, I'm actually not able to really see chat, and we will answer questions at the end. We also have somebody monitoring our Facebook live feed. And so if you do have questions and are watching us live and would like to ask some questions, you can also put it in there. And so we have 3 parts of the webinar. One is to be able to identify at least 3 common stress reactions and 3 ways to deal with stress in a healthy way. Learn how to talk with your family and learn ways to support your school-age children during these changing times, and learn tips on how to set up a new school routine at home. And then we'll have some audience questions. So common stress reactions. We all go through stress. We all have traumatic experiences, and these are some things that people can experience when they've had a stressful or traumatic event. So these include headache, stomach upset, muscle tension, confusion, trouble concentrating, nightmares, feelings of guilt, denial, just not feeling like yourself. It's like, oh, I just kind of feel out of sorts, not real like myself. Just being really irritable, just everything is just irritates you, having angry outbursts, being frustrated, having loss of faith, loss of hope, hopelessness, changes in appetite, sleep changes, and anxiety. And it's real common for us to be able to notice when we're not feeling well physically, and sometimes it's harder for us to know when we're having trouble emotionally. And the thing to remember is that physical and emotional and spiritual, they all go together. And so it's really important to be able to identify when you don't feel quite right and know some things to do when you're having these reactions. And like I said, these are very common reactions, and so we really want to normalize that a lot of people go through these things in these stressful times. So some healthy ways to manage stress. Keep to your routine as much as possible, because that is one thing in these uncertain times that you can control, is what is your routine, what are you going to do, what can you have control over. And it also gives predictability. And if you're in a family situation, if you know what's coming next, your kids know what's coming next, having a routine is really important. Another thing that's really important is self-care, because a lot of people, we're doing so many things. There's people that, people have kids, people have jobs, you're maintaining the house, you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're doing all of this stuff. And sometimes we just say, well, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to take care of myself. But it is important, because if we don't take care of ourselves, it's going to make it even harder to take care of other people. So that's really important. And doing something physical, even if it's in your home, because you can do things in your home like jumping jacks, like running in place, walking around, walking in circles. It may not be that exciting to walk in circles around your house, but at least it's something physical. Some people do yoga, some people meditate. And if you aren't into doing something physical, maybe it could be something like maybe you have a hobby that you really like to do. Some people like to sew or crochet or cook or if you have a chance to garden, paint, dance, anything that you can find to do that can help you feel better and can distract you from what's going on even briefly is really important. Another one is maintaining your contacts. So in this land of social distancing and not being able to be with each other physically, it's still really important to maintain your contacts in some way. And if you're watching us through Facebook, Facebook is a way to do that. Facebook now has rooms that people can use to meet over Facebook. I know in certain communities, WhatsApp is a really popular app that whole families are on. There's WhatsApp groups. People have FaceTime if you have an iPhone, Zoom. Just because you're home and can't physically be with people doesn't mean that you can't, even a text, something to maintain your contacts. And keeping in mind too that having positive contacts is really important. So being able to know who you can reach out to that's going to offer support, because we just get so much into our heads that we think, oh, I'm going through this. I'm the only person who's ever gone or will ever go through this. And when we reach out to people and start talking to them, we can get that support of, oh, you're going through that? I am too. And then you feel, oh, I'm not the only one that's struggling or that's having issues. So that's something else that's really important. So rest, even if you can't sleep, because rest is really important. And some ideas if you can't sleep is maybe relax to music, at least lay down and listen to relaxing music or whatever you enjoy. I know people like to listen to podcasts, some people like audiobooks, or even physically reading a book. Just as long as you're relaxing and getting some rest, that's really important. Another important aspect is to avoid excess in everything. So that includes food, caffeine, alcohol, and other substances, because there are those things that can lead us to feel even worse sometimes. And if our body's not used to it, it could end up making us feel even worse. And remember that there are different aspects to be cared for. So care for your body, your mind, your spirit, and your social self. Because like I was saying, all those things are important and come together to make up your whole self. So make sure that you're eating right and getting some exercise, have something in your mind to be able to distract yourself, remind yourself about your spiritual self and express your spiritual beliefs, and also your social self of maintaining your connections and having that social interaction in a way that makes sense for you. So another question that we get a lot in mental health is, when is it time for me to ask for help? And this is a really good question because, like I said, so many of these reactions are normal and natural to feel down for a while or to feel like you're not quite yourself. So some tips for knowing when it's time to ask for help is if you see that these reactions that you're having are interfering with your daily life and are starting to affect your work, school, relationships, and health. And so if you see with kiddos, if their grades go down, or for yourself, if you just can't seem to get to work on time, or you're arguing with co-workers, or you're having trouble getting along with people in your family, and they let you know that, hey, something seems a little off. And if it's interfering with your health as well, that if you're not eating, not sleeping well, not taking care of yourself, these are things that are a clue to let you know that you should probably try and get some help. And if you just feel completely out of control, that, I don't know where to start, things are completely out of control, I'm out of control, I don't know what to do anymore, could be a sign that you need to ask for help. And of course, thoughts about not wanting to live, because a lot of people have these stress reactions, go through stressful and traumatic things, but not everybody has a thought about wanting not to live or having suicidal thoughts. And so having suicidal thoughts really is a little bit more extreme than what we would think of as a normal reaction. So that could be a clue. And just a lack of interest or enjoyment most of the time. It's like, man, I really used to I like to read and spend time with my family and garden and take the dogs for a walk. And yeah, I'm doing all of that stuff, but I just don't feel the enjoyment that I used to. And the other thing that we look at with this is having intense reactions for 4 to 6 weeks or longer. So it's also a time frame that if it's 4 to 6 weeks and you see that things are still pretty intense and you're not feeling better and it's just more of the same, then that might be a time to ask for help. And I have like this concept that I call an emotional cold, that we all feel bad from time to time, and physically we can get a cold, and that's pretty common. And I think sometimes we pick up emotional colds because of something that happened to us, and sometimes we do just have to wait it out, and after a few days, things change and then we start to feel better. But if it's going on week after week and you just start feeling worse and worse, or you're just not feeling better, that might be a time to ask for help. And another big question is, how do I get help? And this is a really tricky question with, as everybody knows, our system is very complex as far as our healthcare system. And where do I get help? How do I find help? That's a really big question. So a lot of people just start with who they know. And we see a lot of people go to their primary care provider. It may be a doctor, a nurse, a physician's assistant. And now more and more practices actually have a behavioral health care provider in their practice. So if somebody comes in and starts talking about feeling depressed or anxious or has these different symptoms, that primary care provider can refer straight to a mental health professional that can talk to them right then. That's something that's happening more and more in primary care offices, so that could be an option. Another place that you can go is that in Colorado, all of our counties have a community mental health center. And so, for example, in Jefferson County, we have Jefferson Center for Mental Health, and we provide services to Jefferson, Clear Creek, and Gilpin counties. And you can call that number to schedule an evaluation. And if Jefferson Center doesn't quite have what you need, they also have a list of other referrals that they could probably point you in the right direction. And if you have kids and are looking for services for children, a lot of schools have therapists now too, and so you can ask your guidance counselor or check at your school to see if they have a therapist or a counselor who can see the kiddo at school. And also here in Colorado, we have Colorado Crisis Services, and this is a really important number. And crisis is a bit of a misnomer because you can actually call this as more of a warm line. So if you're looking for any kind of mental health or substance use services, you can call this number, and they have all of the information for all of Colorado. And so you can give them your address or your zip code, and they can actually look into what services are available in your area. And also, most of the community mental health centers in Colorado have some kind of sliding scale, and so people don't need to have insurance to get services. Like for example, with us with Centrodones and our bilingual services, people pay as little as $5 a session. And so people just have to provide some information to us to see if they qualify. But most mental health centers have some kind of sliding scale for people who don't have insurance. And so that's really important to know. And we also have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and so that number is 24/7, just as Colorado Crisis Services is. And so that's a number to call as well. In case you're outside of Colorado, that's a number to call to get immediate help. And I think the most important thing is to not be afraid to ask for help, because so many, I don't know, we have this idea that, oh, mental health, oh my gosh, like people are scared or they don't know what's going to happen. And are they going to, do I get a shot? Or are they going to, like, do I have to live there now? I've heard all kinds of questions when people come to see us for the first time. And really all it is talking. The first thing you do is you sit down, you say what's going on, you talk about it, you come up with a treatment plan. And if for some reason the talk therapy doesn't work, then we can refer people to psychiatrists for medication. But most people start with therapy, and a lot of people are really helped with talk therapy. It is effective, and you shouldn't hesitate to ask for help when you need it. And here's some other resources. So we have Jefferson Center for Mental Health. We have our website here, and I'd like to make a special plug for our Centro Dones de la Comunidad, the Centro Dones de Nuestra Comunidad, which is our bilingual program that we have bilingual therapists that can work with people on an outpatient basis. And so if you know anybody who needs Spanish speaking services, or even if a child speaks English but the parents speak Spanish, that would be a good case to refer to us. And that's something that we provide at Jefferson Center for Mental Health. Also, the number for Colorado Crisis Services and their website is there. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and their website. And we also listed some general needs, because we also see that it's really hard for people to focus on self-care and their mental health and how they're doing emotionally, spiritually, socially, when you're worrying about, well, where's the rent going to come from? How are we going to put food on the table? Or am I going to get clothes for the kids and school supplies and whatever like that? So it's really important to also know that your general needs are important as well. So 211 is a good number to call. There's all kinds of resources on there under different categories, or www.211.org. And for Jefferson County Social Services is www.jeffco.us. And all of the counties in Colorado have their own social services. And so if you don't live in Jefferson County, you can look up the county social services where you live, and you can look that up, and they'll be able to tell you how you can access services. There are several now that you can actually start asking for resources online. You can fill out a lot of things online. So that's a good resource to have. And then specifically for Jeffco 2, we have Adelante Jeffco, and they have all kinds of different resources that they have on their Facebook page, that is from having food banks, where the different food banks are, they offer different talks about the community, and those services are also in English and Spanish, just so you are aware. And so the bottom line is really to make sure that you know yourself best. And so you can feel when, okay, I'm feeling out of sorts, but it's temporary and I'm already feeling better, I think it's okay. Or if it takes a turn to, this has been going on a really long time and I don't seem to be feeling better and I actually seem to be feeling kind of worse, then that is the time to reach out to either your primary care doctor, or I didn't mention about insurance, but if you have private insurance, another thing you can do is call your insurance provider. You should have a card and there should be a number on there. You can call them and ask them for a referral, and they can provide you to a referral that takes your insurance. So whether it's your PCP, your insurance, your community mental health center, a crisis line, whatever it is, just ask for help, and we're here to help you. So next, I am going to turn it over to Maida, who is going to present on talking within your family about our new normal. Maida?
Okay, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I apologize in advance for any barking going on in the background that might happen. So my name's Mayra. I'm one of the clinicians that's also part of the team of Centro Dones here for Jefferson Center. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the conversations to be having at home in regards to COVID and the stressors around COVID and what's appropriate in regards to how we talk about it with our children. And yeah, just how we're approaching this new normal, as we call it, at this time. The first of all is just how do we navigate information and the conversations that we are having in our households. We have very mixed families, right? Whether it's multi-generational families or just kids of different ages. Some families have kids in high school as well as like elementary school, and just a big mix. And so it can be a little confusing and a little stressful when it comes to how each child is really absorbing the information, whether it's the news or just what they're hearing at school with their friends, or maybe with their other siblings or the adults in general. And so it's really important to know like what conversations are more appropriate to keep just between the adults in the household, right? Amanda made a good point earlier about it's really difficult to focus on certain things when in regards to like social distancing and stuff like that, especially for our lower income families when it, working remotely isn't really feasible, right? And folks have to work in order to pay rent. And so there's the stress of meeting financial needs. Those are probably conversations to not have around the kids. We don't want to worry them. For an adult, it might be really easy to know, like, okay, having a conversation about rent is normal. Maybe that's something we've had to do even before the pandemic, right? As we get together and talk about rent and how we're doing financially. For a child, that might be a little bit more scary, right? So if they overhear parents discussing, that maybe there's not enough money for rent this month, in a kid's mind, that might automatically trigger this thought of like, oh my gosh, there goes our home, right? We're not going to have a home, and they might freak out a little bit. So just choosing when and where to have those conversations, maybe once they've gone to bed, and just in a space that's safer and more private. If you do have mixed ages within your household, it might be a more appropriate conversation with your adolescents, as they might understand that information a little bit differently than the younger kids. Maybe your adolescents work and they're contributing to some bills or have bills of their own. I mean, those are appropriate conversations to have with them, but always keeping in mind whether or not the little ones are listening in. And also just keeping in mind that the adults in the household are really the ones that set the example in regards to how we deal with situations. It is a very stressful time. I know Amanda just shared a list of some of the reactions that we may be having, whether it's physically or emotionally. And as much as we want to be able to just react, right, because it's some very scary times, we also have to keep in mind that there's kids watching us. And so if I'm, irritable and just snapping at everybody in the house, most likely I live with my niece, right? She's 4. She's probably going to start snapping at me too if she notices that that's what I'm doing. So just setting that example, whether it's trying to have calmer conversations or establishing some new ways of communicating within your household, so that the kids know that it is a safe space to really process what's going on. If we are, especially with the news and access to the news, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, if we are constantly anxious, most likely our kids are going to pick up on those cues and also be anxious throughout the day and scared, because that's what the reaction that they're learning in the home, right? So just being aware of our reactions. Again, if it's something that you've caught on to, that you're having a lot of anxiety around COVID and bills and stressors, getting yourself some help that you can actually, so that you can be more stable and then in return be able to help the children as well. All right, so next slide. So talking with kids and teens, it's really important right now, especially there's a mix of social media and other media outlets and news outlets. There's a lot of new vocabulary being thrown around that our kids maybe have never heard before, right? When we talk about social distancing, when we talk about what is, why we wear masks, and just different things that, we're hearing now. Even recently, there's this new term that I keep hearing being thrown around, which is COVID fatigue, right? And just being able to talk to your kids about what those different terms mean, why social distancing is important, why we're doing it, or why we're trying to practice it as much as possible. I know right now there's a lot of shift going on currently in different counties and throughout the state, in regards to like new cases and what level we're on, and so just being able to have those conversations in the most age appropriate way possible. Being able to explain what COVID is. I know this can be difficult and it can be a little nerve-wracking as an adult, right, to know what language to use with the kids. I don't have a medical degree, right? How am I supposed to explain a virus? So you can ask the school. Sometimes a lot of schools will be giving out different handouts on how to explain these things. You can use Google and look up your clinic and see how if they have any handouts on ways to explain what's going on. So just different ways, using your resources to make sure that you have the information that's the most age appropriate for children. I'm sure by now maybe even Sesame Street has a video out somewhere on their YouTube, right, on how to explain what's going on, and just finding those different resources. In regards to what's going on right now with schools, we know that schools are giving out different options, right? Whether it's hybrid, whether it's all in person, or whether it's all remote. So being able to talk to your kids about why the schools are making these changes, what does it mean? And I know later on we're going to go a little bit into more of like a routine and what that might look like, but just being able to normalize that this is new, right? It is new. It's not a normal school year by any means, that it's normal for them to feel stressed out about what's going on, right? It's normal for them to be missing their friends, especially. We see a lot of that, especially this week, right, with Halloween. Usually our kids are used to like Halloween parties, going trick-or-treating during the weekend, right? So just being able to create a safe space in your home right now for your kids to be able to have those conversations. The holidays are coming up, right? Outside of Halloween, we have Thanksgiving coming up, and then different holidays for different religious practices in regards to Christmas and Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa and all of that, right? And so just being able to talk to the kids about it. That might look a little bit different this year, right? We did this presentation in Spanish a couple weeks ago, and some of our families within the Latino community, we talked about, normally this is the time when folks are traveling back home, right? Whether it's Mexico or anywhere in Latin America. And that's a time that kids normally get really excited about because they're going to be able to see grandma and grandpa and cousins, right? And this year they might not be able to do so. And so you're dealing with a lot of new symptoms of like just being upset, being sad, and having to be creative around how can we spend a little bit of time, even if it is virtually, with grandma and grandpa or the primos, right, like the cousins, back home during a year that we're just not able to practice like we have been normally. So those are important conversations to be having right now. It might look very different when you have that conversation with your teenager as you do with your, preschooler, and you're able to kind of practice. This doesn't come with instruction, so we might not get it right the first time, but just being aware of how each of your children are really absorbing that information. Next slide. Talking to kids about their worries and their fears. Like the adults, right? All of us are really unsure what's going to happen, right? We don't know how long virtual learning is going to be going on for. We don't know what's going to happen next summer, right? I know this summer was very different for kids, and so there might be some fear already that who knows if next summer is going to be back to normal. And so just being able to have conversations about how they're really feeling about all of these changes, and normalizing that, they might be feeling some uneasy feelings, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, confusion, a little bit of everything. It really helps to limit access to social media or other like news and media networks, whether it's, coming up with different rules. We don't have our phones at dinner time, or we don't bring our phones to the table during meal times. We don't have the news on during meal times, right? Again, when we did this last week with our Latino community, growing up Latina, you always have the news on during dinner, and maybe right now that's not the best time to have that going on, right? So just setting those times, some quiet time for your family. It doesn't mean that it's not a good time for them to share how they're feeling. It doesn't mean that they can't talk about what's going on. It's maybe just something that's more led by the adults in the household than really facilitated by social media or the news. So trying to limit that. Again, different social media might look differently. It might be a different type of outlet, especially right now with this being an election time, right? Like I know for myself, I try to stay away from Facebook as much as possible, but maybe I'll go on TikTok if I need to laugh for the evening, right? If I need to watch something funny. So having those conversations, right? What social media are you using? What kind of pages are you following? Is it exhausting, right? How are you feeling after you scroll through Instagram for an hour, right? So really checking in with your kids about how social media is affecting them. It's really good to reassure them that the adults around them are trying their best to keep them as safe as possible. We're not just keeping them home on the weekends. We're not doing remote learning just because we like to make them angry, right? Or to annoy them if they're teenagers. That this is really for an important reason, and that it's okay to be upset about it. But that we're trying the best that we can in order to keep them as safe as possible. Also give your kids the opportunity to really talk about those feelings. So again, this is another thing where we really set the example, right? If I am with my niece and I tell her that I'm fine 24/7, right? And I never express any type of emotions around her of like, hey, this is really sad that we don't get to travel, or we had to cancel a Disney World trip. So it was normal for us to be like, oh, it sucks that we can't go to Disney, but we're planning it again for next year, right? Or we'll move it to next year. So we set the example on really how we're communicating our emotions, and that normalizes it for them as well, right? There's this fear, especially maybe with like teenagers, right? Of like, I can't let mom and dad know that I'm afraid. I can't let mom and dad know that I'm sad about what's going on. Teenagers understand things a lot differently, so they might already feel some guilt about, mom and dad are stressed, or mom and dad are exposed because of their jobs, or they're stressed about rent. And so they might be actually limiting themselves in regards to how much they're sharing with you, because they're not exactly sure if you might have the capacity to really listen, or the space, or the time. And so when you open up that conversation and start setting that example of like, hey, let's talk about how we're feeling, it really invites them to the conversation and provides them a safe space to express themselves. It's also really important to validate their feelings, even if as an adult you might be completely calm and you know that somewhere scientists are taking care of things, and there you have some hope that things are going to get better. It might look a little different for a teenager. It might look a little bit different for a third grader. And so validating that, being afraid is normal, being upset is normal, and those are their feelings and they're valid. So it might not necessarily be helpful to laugh, right, if they express something that they might be feeling, but just giving them really a space to express themselves without feeling shamed about some of the feelings that they might have going on. With all of that being said, it is also important to share your own coping skills for kids with your children. So if it's really helpful for you that, during this whole pandemic, you've established a really good exercise routine, and that not only helps you feel better physically, but also mentally, whether that's inviting your kids to come on a run with you, on a walk with you, or just simply expressing that how helpful it's been for you, and maybe suggesting that they find something active for them to do. If you're really into art and that's a time that's really relaxing, whether that's planning an art time for the family all together, or just sharing that, hey, let's set up a little area for you to do some art and really have your space to relax. So just exchanging different ideas with them on what might help. Especially when it comes to like access to social media. So if I share that, I'd like to not look at my phone, after 8 p.m. and just sharing that that's really helpful, or that's not the first thing I do when I wake up is check my Facebook, right? Sharing those kinds of ideas with them might really help them come up with things that will help them feel a little bit better. as well as if normally for some of us adults that do maybe have struggled with anxiety and we know what it feels like to feel really stressed out and worried throughout the day, maybe we have some meditation or some deep breathing techniques or self-soothing techniques that have really helped. And it's, really helpful to practice those in front of our kids. So let's all have a seat and we're going to pass around this, I don't know, slime, right? Because almost every kid at home right now has a stash of slime somewhere. So let's bring your slime and let's all play with some slime and talk about how our days went. Let's all take a few deep breaths together. I've seen a trend lately on Instagram also of parents who are trying to practice something a little bit different than just a timeout chair. And it might look like a self-soothing corner, right, where you have different toys that stimulate different parts, right? So whether it's like slime again for their senses, whether it's some flowers that you picked or that you bought for the sense of smell, some books. So just setting up little corners where it's their safe space for maybe for when they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed or they're tired of being on Zoom all day from school, just a little area where they can escape to. Next slide. So how do you want to create this new normal between your family? Again, it's really up to every family. It's going to look different. The pandemic didn't come with instructions for any of us, right? So we're all just kind of making things up as we go. But what's the collective energy in our household? Are we all bickering at each other and being really aggressive? Are we maybe spending more time together now that, nobody can be in different places all at one time? Are we having maybe meals again? Maybe that hasn't been a thing, and now all of a sudden we're having dinner time together. So what are the different things that we're doing to kind of cope with this thing as a collective, as a unit within our households? Are we really listening to each other when people are stressed out? So those types of things are really important to kind of think about at this time. Also, are there new traditions that we can come up with or that we can continue? Within Centro Dones, we do work with a lot of Latin American families, and we know, especially like right now, again, here in the United States, Halloween is coming up, but for some of us, we're also practicing Dia de los Muertos, and so maybe we can't go to any community events where we're able to mourn as a community, but we can do something at home. So whether that's setting up our ofrendas at home and talking to our kids about what that might look like, maybe starting a tradition where we FaceTime with family and play bingo over, FaceTime or Facebook Live or whatever that might look like together. So just different things that you can come up with, trying to make things as fun and creative as possible for kids so that we're not just, keeping them in a space where it's constantly stress and tension, right? So can we do anything fun during this time? Next slide. I think that was it. Okay, so that's it for me. I'm going to hand it over to Chelsea, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that that transition to when we talk about how to talk with our kids and the different things we can do to connect with them, I think that's such an important thing as we talk about routines. There are so many things we can be doing with our family. I think when COVID, I know for myself and my family, when COVID first hit, we were just like scrambling to survive. I was like, I need daycare has shut down. I have to watch you. I have to do my sessions. There were so many things that I know for myself, I wasn't intentional about how I approached our day and our meals and our wake ups and our bedtimes. And there's so many opportunities for us to create routines and rituals so things are predictable. For when things feel out of control, there's just really great chance to connect. So some of the benefits to maintaining a routine, they help reduce stress and help stay calm, that self-control. I think also as our kids go from being little ones that we have to do a lot of things for and establish a lot of support for, right? They grow up. They are able to go to the bathroom by themselves. They're able to brush their own teeth and get themselves dressed, drive themselves to school. There's all of these really great things. And so routines help set our kids up for taking advantage of those new skills and the ability to practice. I think often as parents, we try to get things done quickly. We try to move at a breakneck pace so we can get to work, the kids can get to school, and COVID has given us this opportunity, I will call it that, to slow down, right? We're all staying home. There is this time to have more shared space and for the kids to take on some responsibility of getting things done, because who cares if they forget to put their pants on for a Zoom meeting? It's top half, so that's okay. Who cares if they aren't wearing matching socks or they want to wear a quirky hat? There's this great chance for, I think, us as adults in kids' lives to let them take on some reins and some decision making. And then also with kids, right, avoiding boredom, setting up routine creates predictability that I think sometimes for parents, they're like, oh, we're doing the same thing again. We do the same thing every meal. But really for kids, knowing what's going to come next, especially in this time of uncertainty, creates it sets them up for this, like the crystal clear water, right? You walk out to the lake in the morning and things are even. There have been no giant stones where you're rushing to school because you knew what time you were going to wake up, you knew the things that needed done in the morning, and there's so much beauty in that. And so I think along those lines, right, there's no perfect routine. What works well for me with my 16-month-old is not going to work with someone with a 16-year-old. And that's great for you, right? You don't have to do some of those things. And then again, the independence. I think another really important thing is noted here is that being flexible. While we may be at home and while some things are rather predictable in the monotony, right, we're doing the same thing every day, things do change. Even this thought about, right, we just had a snow day yesterday. Who even knew those would still be happening during COVID, but there was a snow day. And so as a grown-up taking care of a child, maybe that meant your student who was doing a in-person learning day was at home with you. So having maybe a contingency routine, thinking if the kids are home, what does that look like for me as a grown-up? Being flexible and letting everyone in your circle know about what these different challenges might look like. As well as wanting to bring on every person in the household in that decision making, even your toddler, in helping decide what song we're going to sing while we brush our teeth, or what movie we're going to watch as a family if we do Friday night movie nights, letting everyone be involved in that decision. Because everyone's going to want something different, right? If you have a 16-year-old and again a 16-month-old, those needs are so different, but they're both equally as important, just as much as the guardians are, the people taking care of these kids, or the older family members you have in the house. So making sure that each person can contribute in a way that's meaningful for them, right? Again, going to be very different from 16 months, 16 years to 60 years old. But getting that buy-in and that engagement in the routine is going to be important for making it stick and having it produce something that's meaningful for your family. So some really great things to include in a routine. There's sort of a weekly plan and then a weekend plan. And when we think about our older kids, right, for Jefferson County, I think it's 6th grade and up, they're doing like a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday kind of school thing with no school on Friday. So knowing that those things are going to all look different. So the time you expect your child to wake up and the way you wake up. So things like kids wake up, do they brush their teeth before breakfast or after breakfast? Are you all cooking as a family, or is one parent or guardian or one child cooking something for everyone to enjoy together? I love shared meals for a routine. I think similar to what Myra was talking about, how beautiful that you can all sit down and share a meal and talk about emotions and talk about what your day was like yesterday or what your day is going to look like today. Some things you're looking forward to. I love at any moment in the day to just pop in a thing of gratitude. Is there a way you can mix gratitude into that routine? Again, mornings, nights, all of those are really beautiful times. With school, with our little ones being in school, figuring out a good work, study, playtime schedule is huge, right? I know for myself, if I sit at the computer for 8 hours a day, as I would, right? If I was at the office, that's nothing. I can get up and walk around. But there are times I notice when I sit down when the sun comes up and I like watch it kind of tick by and I'm like, I didn't get up. I didn't structure my day with enough release. And man, how important that can be for our little ones as they also are sitting all day more or less on Zoom, trying to navigate technology and all the different apps that are expected, and how big for caregivers as well. So finding time to connect with each other, not on a school base, not even on like a chore thing, but just time to connect and have fun as a family. And what that looks like is going to be best for you guys, right? A toddler could really love to play that board game. An older kid, maybe you join them in their video game time. But being intentional, I think, is really important because it's so easy, especially for guardians and caregivers when we're at home. Things are piling up. Like, how many more dishes have I done because I eat all of my meals at home, and everyone is eating all these meals at home? Things pile up. There will always be more of that to do. And if I'm not intentional about my work time, the time I engage with my family, and the time that I engage with myself, which is for parents and guardians, like, doubly important during COVID. If I'm not intentional, I know those things tend to go by the wayside. And along those same lines, right, staying in touch with friends and family. As was mentioned, I think finding a way to be connected is such a great thing. And I don't praise social media often, but it is such a beautiful thing to log on and see what my family is doing, or use FaceTime, and my toddler gets to talk with his nanny and hear about her day and the things she's been doing, and he sort of just babbles on and shares his day with her. So finding times again to schedule with close friends, family, whatever your social network looks like. And so I think there's a really unique challenge to creating a school routine, right? As I mentioned, I just have a toddler, and so I can only imagine the challenges of getting a 5-year-old logged on and sitting still on Zoom. And maybe they didn't put their pants on that day, like I mentioned, and the threat of them getting up and running around is very real. And so I think that setting up those morning routines where a child knows what's predictable and what to expect each morning, that can shorten those discussions and arguments and fits about what's expected, or when am I going to do this, or what comes next. If kids, I think a really beautiful thing for those younger kids is that, like, a picture chart, or often they use that clip chart. So something is a clip and it's a picture of their clothes, a toothbrush, a breakfast meal, maybe reading a book or playing with their toys, and they get to do getting those things done. They get to check it off the list. And for older kids, again, giving that independence and saying, this is what time we're all going to be down eating breakfast. And then I think it might be the next slide, but there's something along the lines of, like, even just at 5 minutes before school start, everything is sitting down, we're ready to go.
I think we may have lost Chelsea. Are you there, Chelsea? Okay, well, I'll take over. So it is important to have a calendar. I was just talking to somebody this morning about, having parents with different kids, that having a calendar of what all the kids need, and different kids are also on different schedules. So they may have a hybrid where they're in school one day, they're at home another day, and man, that would drive me nuts. So having a calendar so you know what's coming when, and also, as Chelsea mentioned, turning on the computer and having everything set before school starts, because there's this saying that if you're on time, you're late. So trying to be early, and at least 5 minutes, having the goal be, okay, before 5 minutes before school starts, we're going to sit down and get started, and try to minimize distractions as much as possible, and try to confirm the participation of your children in their virtual classes. Oh, Chelsea's back. Well, let me readmit her. Let's see, the joys of technology. So it is really important. So also with minimizing distractions, thinking about setting up a space for your child that is their school space. So even if it's a corner of the room, or even if it's just a corner of the kitchen table, just designating a space that this is their school space can be really helpful to try and have that separation. And I know not all of us have the luxury of having a separate office for each child. I know I certainly wouldn't, but at least having, even like I said, even if it's a corner of the kitchen table or a corner of the counter, that like, okay, this is your school space and this is where you're going to do your work, is really important. Hi, Chelsea. We lost you there. So I just kind of continued on.
Hi. I know. Thank you. I was talking and then everything was frozen and I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
I don't know where I went. So
I just kind of jumped in. So I was just thinking about confirming, minimizing distractions. Uh-oh. Oh dear. We can't hear you. We're losing you. I think maybe we lost her again. All right. Well, I'll just continue on. We're almost at the end. Thank you, Chelsea. That was really good.
I'm
That was a lot of
sorry.
good information. That's okay. We all have our
Sorry.
That's okay. But I think that's something to exemplify here too, is that, like Maida said, there was no handbook for a pandemic, and we're all doing the best we can. And it's really important not to judge ourselves as parents, as brothers, sisters, moms, dads, kids, whatever we are. Like, just don't judge yourself. We're all doing the best we can, and just being gentle and easy on yourself and realizing that things are going to happen. That's why you need to be flexible, like be structured and flexible at the same time, is really important. So thank you, Chelsea. So these are some really great resources. And so for all of y'all that have logged in today through our Zoom, through Eventbrite, I have your email, and so I will be sending you this PowerPoint presentation with all of the resources. For those of you who are on Facebook, who are watching our Facebook Live, this will be also available on our YouTube channel later on if you want to reference these resources. But this first one, childmind.org, is really excellent to give you different ideas of how to work with kids and just things about children of different ages. And there's another ones here about strategies for parents with young children in schools, and this other one, edutopia.org, establishing routines for remote learning. And yeah, just remembering that we're all doing our best. And speaking of doing our best, how are you on time? All right, 5:22, we're doing good. So I would like to invite our friend of Centrodones, Hedman. ¿Qué tal, Hedman?
Hola, Amanda, ¿cómo están? ¿Cómo estás? Es Mayra, Chelsea, mucho gusto. Hello, how's everyone? How's everyone?
Good. So I just wanted to give you a few minutes to talk about your organization, Balon USA.
Absolutely.
The importance
thank
of
you.
physical activity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amanda. And also thank you for providing this information to the families. And like you said, the most important is to reach out with the specialists. And I have a question. What's the difference between a therapist and a counselor? Is the same? Or is I was just curious about that question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because therapists can be a lot of, ooh, what did I do? I'm messing with my thing here. Oh. Therapists can be a lot of different people. So like licensed clinical social workers can be considered therapists.
Okay.
Maida, Chelsea, and I are licensed professional counselors. We can be considered therapists. There's marriage and family therapists. There's PhD and PsyD psychologists who could also be called therapists. And in my training as a professional counselor, therapist and counselor were used interchangeably. And so the therapist is really more of a generic term.
Okay. Yeah, and the reason I'm asked this question is because at schools, they have therapists, correct? Specialists, and each school provide at least therapists. Or a counselor, they say, but most family hear the term therapist. Yeah, but anyways, but thank you for answering that question. And also, Chelsea was saying that, be flexible, or flexibility, and being intentional in this when we are facing this COVID-19 with this 2020 is not just regular year. I mean, I'm thinking not to count for this year because all this happens. I think that 2020 doesn't exist.
Yeah, we'll just throw it out. We'll just
Exactly. But yeah, so Balloon USA, you know, and this is why we started the conversation with you. Thank you to Jefferson Center Mental Health and Centro Dones that always are willing to support our families, especially, you know, when they are practicing a sport. And since we weren't able to offer the, you know, the soccer regular season in spring, and in this year, I mean, in fall, we just offer practices. It was for 6 weeks. So thanks to a collaboration with Edgewater Collective, is another nonprofit based in city of Edgewater. So the city of Lakewood, they provide this free of charge facility use. It was the soccer field. It was a park, Walker Branch Park, where we provide, you know, resources for families. We provide a hotspot on like a internet, high-speed internet. We provide, you know, the stand with provided by the Colorado State University. Also, you know, 7 students from Jefferson High School were able to provide tutoring to, you know, the students from different, you know, elementary schools from Edgewater, Mohon, Lumber. So also from Foster Elementary, Swanson, and also Secrets. So we were so happy that, you know, we were able to offer, you know, the healthy benefits for playing soccer. And also it was a practice, you know, soccer can be a great workout and lots of fun, you know, lots of health benefits, and including the increased aerobic capacity and also cardio health. So it also improves your muscle tones, build strength, flexibility. So along with these benefits, we also is generally a non-contact sport since it was outdoors. So it was a great to, you know, setting up the protocols for the families and make sure, you know, everybody, we were taking the temperatures, everybody were using the gel or, you know, hand sanitizer. So at the end, you know, the idea of Balloon USA is provide soccer opportunities to underserved communities, especially a high quality soccer opportunities, which means provide jerseys, provide soccer balls. We provide coaches because coaches receive a stipend and also training. We also provide, you know, soccer goals. So in normal season, we paint the fields. So we use a referee. So it is, you know, how expensive sometimes is to put your child in sports. It is, sometimes you cannot find those leagues. So the idea that Balloon USA is a nonprofit organization is to offer these services in spring 2021. Hopefully things change, and we wanted to offer, you know, the 8 weeks and also with the games on Saturday. So we will be promoting also our website. So as you can see, our website is Balloon, www.balloonusa.org, or also the HTTPS, which is much better. So thank you for putting that. So they just keep, you know, logging in the website. And if you guys want to just to get more information about, so what we encourage coaches to promote is to teach coordinations, promote teamwork and sharing, you know, teach you to think on the run. So helps to increase skills, concentrations, also persistence and self-discipline. So all these, you know, benefits that can be offering our programs, thanks to, you know, the foundations like Coral Health Foundation, donors, sponsors that are, you know, supporting, because this program is specifically for Title I schools. Title I schools from, articulation area from Jefferson public schools, and also the Southeast Arvada, and also Lakewood schools. But, we're thinking probably to open our services to other schools. We're going to be able to register students that are going to be in another schools, but they're living in this area and they want to practice and wanted to play soccer games. So I think it's going to be another option. So I think with that said, if you guys have any questions, please contact us through their website, or you guys can call me to 303-589-5058. And also, Amanda, thank you so much on behalf of the parents and also the students from this program. I believe since it's going to be recorded, you can share it to them, and which is, a lot of parents probably will be happy to receive this information, which is essential for our families.
All right, thank you, Edmond. So we're actually right at time, actually a little over time. So any questions? I'm trying to see if there were any questions in the chat. Or Addie, are there any questions from the Facebook?
We had one question, but it was about our mobile services van. So a little different from this presentation, but
yeah.
One question.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. Services. Let's give a minute to see if anybody has any questions. Well, I'll check it one more time before we sign off, but I just want to encourage you, like I said, to be gentle with yourself, have a structure, but be flexible, reach out for help when you need it, and we're just all doing the best we can. And thank you all very much for being here, and for those of you on Facebook, thank you for joining us. There's no other questions. Nope, I don't see anything. All right, well, thank you, everybody.